Pounds from a property and business empire. Is King Charles ripping off the British taxpayer? I'll be speaking to one of the best connected royal journalists in the country. And is Donald Trump days away from an extraordinary political comeback and a glorious return to the White House? I'll be asking one of his senior advisors. And looking forward to this in an hour's time. In my take at 10, appalling vicious attacks this weekend demonstrates that Kemi Badenoch has already got the left running scared. Let me tell you, their nightmare has only just begun. Bring popcorn. They are attacking Kemi because they are scared the bejesus of her, and that is my take at 10. So for full reaction to the big stories of the day, tonight's top pundits: former Conservative MP and farmer, a lot poorer since Wednesday, Neil Parish; former advisor to Boris Johnson, Lord Coolvere Ranger; and a good friend of mine, former Labour Party candidate, Susie Stride. So, 2 hours of big opinion, big debate and big entertainment. The vile leftists attacking Kemi Badenoch is my take at 10. You won't want to miss it. That's in an hour. And don't forget, this show has a golden rule. We don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. This dishonest, duplicitous government are getting the big opinion treatment straight after the headlines. And Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you. The top stories. Well, Kemi Badenoch has made her first senior appointment as the new Conservative Party leader. It's understood that Dame Rebecca Harris will be the party's chief whip, replacing Stuart Andrew. Now, the job of chief whip is to maintain party discipline and try to ensure MPs vote as the leadership would like them to. Well, meanwhile, Kemi Badenoch says she'll tell hard truths to both the country and her party as she began her first full day as Conservative leader. She also says Partygate was overblown and the government shouldn't have fined people for everyday activities during lockdown. Kemi Badenoch won more than 53,000 votes in the contest, whilst her rival Robert Jenrick received 41,000. Ms Badenoch is expected to name her full shadow cabinet in the coming days ahead of their first meeting on Tuesday. Elsewhere, as you've been hearing, Labour MP Dawn Butler shared a social media post accusing Kemi Badenoch of representing white supremacy in blackface shortly before she was elected as the new Tory leader. The Brent East MP has since deleted the repost from her X account. Neither Downing Street nor Dawn Butler have made any comments thus far. Former Conservative Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng told Camilla Tominey this morning there should be disciplinary action.
She's a race baiter. Why has she still got the whip?
Look, that's up to Labour.
What do you think, genuinely?
I genuinely think that, given what she said, she should have the whip removed from her. There should be some discipline and some disciplinary measure against this kind of really hateful device.
I was reminded.
Now, Rachel Reeves says the money raised through changes to inheritance tax to farmers will go back to public services. The Chancellor says farmers also rely on good public services, including the NHS and schools, adding the funds generated by these tax changes will also put public financing back on firm footing. When challenged by Camilla Tominey on the inheritance tax changes, Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury James Murray said the existing features of the inheritance tax system will still apply. Now, a joint investigation from both Channel 4 and the Sunday Times has revealed the full details of the property estates owned by the King and Prince William. The investigation shows the vast array of commercial property the royal family has built up from the time of medieval monarchs. Their contracts with public bodies are said to include £37 million agreement with the Ministry of Justice and an £11.4 million deal with Guy's and St Thomas's NHS Trust. A spokesman for the Duchy of Cornwall said it was a private estate with a commercial imperative, while the Duchy of Lancaster said their business complies with all relevant UK legislation. Well, that comes as Prince William travels to South Africa this week for his Earthshot Prize award ceremony. And that prize is hoped to recognise environmental solutions to repair the planet. And there are now just 2 days to go until the US election. Shock polling from a traditionally Republican Iowa has placed Democratic candidate Kamala Harris ahead of Donald Trump by 3 points. It comes as Kamala Harris appeared overnight in a comedy sketch on Saturday Night Live in New York, where comedian Maya Rudolph dressed as the current vice president. Polls elsewhere in states such as Pennsylvania and Michigan show the two candidates are tied ahead of Election Day on Tuesday. And of course, you can tune in to GB News for live full coverage overnight from 11 p.m. on Tuesday. And those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. I'll be back in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
The vicious attacks on Kemi Badenoch demonstrate that she's already winning. That is my take at 10. It's a busy show. Strap yourselves in. We start with my big opinion. The fish rots from the head down. Sir Keir Starmer's dishonesty, evidenced long before his election as Prime Minister via endless U-turns, political doublespeak and a pattern of broken promises, was in strong evidence well before he became Prime Minister. And that is a huge issue. Let me tell you that I've got major concerns about the character of the man that is at number 10. So, folks, let me tell you that it's a matter of national interest that we can trust our politicians, that we know that what they're saying is what they actually think. OK, so that is crucial and critical. And I've put together something of a file that demonstrates just how untrustworthy this government is. OK, so look, it happened on Wednesday. We had, didn't we, the budget, and we had all these promises. We weren't going to raise taxes. We were going to not borrow any more money. Well, let me tell you, it has made for the most horrific reading. So many people absolutely struggling, let me tell you. Now, before we get to these points, I want to know what you think. Do you still trust this Labour government? gbnews.com/your say. And I will get to your thoughts on this very shortly. Team, if you can, jump me to after the news headlines and we will crack on. OK, folks, and we are in. So, folks, there we are. Look, let me tell you that I am not happy, and let me tell you that we will start right here. Sir Keir Starmer is not an honest Prime Minister. The country is broke, apparently, but the government have found £9 billion for inflation-busting pay rises in the public sector. Their big sell before the election was to support enterprise, and now they're drawing up legislation which makes it less attractive for companies to hire people and harder for them to fire crap employees with new French-style labour laws. And in Wednesday's budget, this pro-business government taxes business to the tune of £25 billion on top of painful new red tape that will send many to the wall. This will be the first government in history to grow the economy by crushing free enterprise. Make it make sense. Meanwhile, under this self-styled fiscally prudent government, the NHS gets an eye-watering cash bonanza without any promise of more efficiency or reforms, which, if you ask me, throws good money after bad. But what was the most egregious aspect of Wednesday's budget? Well, it's not just that it exacerbates rather than fixes Britain's economic problems. It's the profound dishonesty at its heart. The debate about what defines a working person, more snake oil language from Starmer, looks to be academic, as anyone with a job has been clobbered this week. On the new tax on employers, for example, the respected and politically neutral Paul Johnson from the Institute for Fiscal Studies said this week, this is a £25 billion tax rise, proportionally hitting harder those employing lower paid workers. Probably 3/4 or so of the increase will flow through to lower pay. So it's untrue of Rachel Reeves to tell the excellent Laura Kuenssberg on the BBC this morning that ordinary working people will not see this tax hike on their payslip. Yes, they will. And ultimately, for some, their payslip will be replaced with a P45. Layoffs are coming. You heard it here first. Now, Reeves, our first woman chancellor, which is embarrassing for women, also told Koonsberg the freeze on tax thresholds will be lifted in a couple of years. Well, in fact, it's 2028. That is 4 years from now. When did 4 years become a couple of years? She's obviously been getting her numbers from Diane Abbott. Whatever a working person is, none of them are happy under this new regime. Listen, if we're going to have socialism, fine. I wouldn't mind if we did it properly so this failed idea can be strangled for good. Instead, we've got a government that pretended to be New Labour before the election, but is in fact old Labour. And we have a Prime Minister who posed as Tony Blair 2.0, but more closely resembles the execrable Jeremy Corbyn. Now, the author George Orwell effectively pioneered the idea of doublespeak. What is doublespeak? Well, it's when you say something, but the opposite words are true. And Labour's budget for growth would fit neatly into that category, given that, according to the Office for Budget Responsibility, it will send growth south. The other big fat lie relates to borrowing. While Rachel Reeves said she would not need to borrow further, well, we're going to, and we're going to do that by changing the way that debt is calculated. This is what I would call cooking the books. And frankly, it would have even Gary Barlow's tax accountant blushing. The cost of 10-year gilt yields, in other words, the cost of us borrowing money from the markets, is now higher than under Liz Truss. That's right, they kept that quiet, didn't they? And so not only is further borrowing economically unwise, interest alone is projected to reach £120 billion a year, almost double the defence budget. The borrowing is also unethical. This worrying move will further burden future generations. Why should your grandchildren pay for amply rewarded train drivers to get yet another pay hike? And by the way, poor old Rishi Sunak is proved right once again. In July of last year, he warned that Labour would put taxes up in a canny tweet on X. He urged people to bookmark it. He said, Keir Starmer will put up your taxes, bookmark this tweet. Well, that tweet went viral on Wednesday and was seen by over 5 million people for obvious reasons. I miss Rishi. What a crying shame that this talented and honest politician who committed to Rwanda, reduced inflation to 2% and took the UK to #1 in the G7 for economic growth, now spends his days in his rural constituency listening to farmers bemoan the price of chicken feed and bull's semen. And talking of utter bullocks, Labour said they wouldn't put up taxes, they put up taxes. They said they wouldn't increase borrowing, they increased borrowing. They said they were business friendly, they have attacked business. They said they would protect working people, who quite provably will now have less money and may even lose their job as companies frantically try to protect their balance sheets. This is a say one thing, do another government. Duplicity and dishonesty is in the DNA of this doomed political project. Ain't that the truth? Well done, team. We got there in the end. Listen, your thoughts, gbnews.com/your say. Tonight's top pundits. In no particular order, we have former Conservative MP and farmer Neil Parish, who's decided not to leave his worldly goods to his family because he can't afford it. I've also got former advisor to Boris Johnson, Lord Coolvere Ranger, and former Labour prospective parliamentary candidate, Susie Stride. Susie, so good to see you again. Welcome back. You've been in the States, haven't you?
I was in the States, yes.
That's great. Great to. We'll get to Kamala later. But can we talk about Sir Keir Starmer and the rank dishonesty within this Labour administration? You're an honest, straightforward person. I don't think your party is.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's not going to come as a surprise to you that I don't agree with your assessment of the situation.
How dare you? This is called Mark Dolan tonight.
Exactly. Look, you know, I'm excited by this budget. I'm excited. If I'm honest with you, I was 14 years, even just as a frontline worker, I was a frontline worker in schools, working with young people from difficult backgrounds. And I tell you what, it was so soul-destroying watching things get cut left, right and centre. And to be honest, for me, this feels like a breath of fresh air. And I'll be honest, I don't think any of us know. You know, we're 4 days on. No one knows, other than our right-wing press, that had already decided what they were were going to say, as far as I'm concerned, already decided. You know, we don't know actually what's going to be the outcome of this budget, and I'm quite excited to see something new, a breath of fresh air. You know, I mean, everyone else can nod their head, that's fine. And, you know, I actually think it's good for working people. We can come back to that thing about working people because actually, you know, people write whole dissertations and books on the, you know, it's about what is working class. That isn't a simple term to define, and I actually think it's very normal that actually people in the Labour Party are struggling to define that term because academics and highly intelligent people struggle. I'm a working class person from a working class background. I would struggle to define it because, you know, in some ways it's fluid. But coming back to the budget, I understand there are things that I'm not happy about, especially when it comes to farmers. I'm not happy about that. And there are things in the budget that maybe, well, I mean, I'm not the Chancellor and I'm definitely like an expert in these things.
I think you do a lot better job.
Well, maybe. Well, no, I don't want to say that. But I think, you know, the investment in the NHS, and it doesn't just need investment, it needs reform. But it does need investment in schools.
Shouldn't you have reform before the investment? Because that's leverage, isn't it?
Well, no, so, for example, let's just go to schools for a second. And as I say, 20 years in schools, so there's some I can speak in this with some confidence. You know, kids with special educational needs were not getting the support they need. Not good enough. And the fact that we have pledged $1 billion to that, I'm sorry, that is going to change thousands of children's lives.
I think if you look at some of the detail of what Labour are going to do, people won't have a problem with it. But why couldn't they have told us they were going to do this before the election?
I mean, look, I mean, it's really funny.
We don't need to raise taxes, except we'll raise taxes by 40 billion. We don't need to increase borrowing, except we will.
The thing is, we didn't... I know you keep saying, oh, you know, it's going to hit working people, this,
It's so annoying with all my facts.
No, but it's not... No, because I just... You know, look, I don't agree with that. Look, you know, there are taxes on certain people, and I don't mind the people with the broadest shoulders. The other thing that bothers me is the small businesses, and I would agree on that. Yeah, let someone else...
Listen, I've just given Labour something of a roasting, so you're entitled to counter. And actually, Neil, according to polling this week, the public are quite supportive of Labour's budget.
I don't think they will be at all, because at the end of the day, there's going to be, you know, it's going to hit small businesses, it's going to hit employment, and you've got the borrowing now higher, the cost of bonds now higher than it was under Liz Truss. I mean, the markets have told you exactly what it was. 2 years ago...
Rachel Reeves crashed the economy.
Yeah, 2 years ago, Mark, we were, when the Russians carried on into Ukraine, we had a food crisis, we had hyperinflation, we needed farmers, we needed our own production. And so they turn round now and say, right, OK, family farms are going to be attacked. Because farmers only return about 1.5% on capital, and this is ridiculous what Labour is doing. And so not just about farming, but small business. I mean, I've got a local butcher who employs people to pick his turkeys. Everything is horrendously expensive. They're going to drive the private sector out when you want the private sector to create the wealth to support the public sector. The public sector drains the economy. It's necessary, but it drains the economy. We've got to have the private sector, and this budget does nothing for the private sector.
Kulvir, this is a Labour government that's investing in public services. What's not to like? That is what a Labour government is there for. That's why they were elected.
I think that's right, but they weren't elected, as you've said, on the basis that they would be raising taxes. That was their one promise. But I hear, Susie, and I hear this undiluted enthusiasm that you have for this budget, but it's absolutely not what I've been hearing from my 25 years in industry, of which 21 have been in the private sector, working commercially, growing in businesses, earning, paying taxes that get the economy moving. Every business I've seen has been hit. Every business that pay for working people are saying they're not going to be able to do it. Yeah. And not only them, the pensioners, let's not forget, there are 9 million pensioners that have lost their winter fuel allowance. Let's not forget all those millions of people who travel on the buses that have had their bus fare increased by 50%. I think they'll be working people. And obviously our good friends, the farmers, as well as all businesses who have maybe a handful of people or hundreds of people, the national insurance increase. This is not a budget that will bring growth. As you spoke about doublespeak, this is a tax and spend. It takes some kind of brilliance, and I'm quoting Andrew Neil's week, a very respected political analyst.
I remember him.
Once of this parish.
That's right.
But who who said, you know, the 140-odd billion that will be borrowed, the extra 70 billion of spending, and still end up, by the OBR's view, a smaller British economy.
But the thing is,
what I
want to come in... Look, let's not have short-term memory here. I'm sorry. Not that long ago, you had Liz Truss, you had a mini budget that made the pound...
Borrowing's just as expensive now
that made the pound dive. And I'm sorry...
also fell this week.
Well, I mean, and for me, that's quite usual. You've had this massive announcement in the budget. It's the first Labour budget in 14 years. You've got the right-wing press...
You can't...
Let Susie finish.
You've got the right-wing press hammering it left, right and centre. And this is what I'll say. Let's judge it in a few months. Let's see where we are. But if you're going to talk about working people, national minimum wage going up, and obviously a Labour idea, but a national minimum wage going up, and the economy does well, you've got to have good schools and a thriving NHS, both of which you did not have under the Tories.
Well, indeed, and of course Labour have argued that actually they think growth is going to be higher than predicted by the OBR, thanks to the investment they're making in the economy and in infrastructure and public services. And let me tell you that the polls suggest that the public are quite happy with Labour's budget, but will it come with a sting in its tail in the years ahead? Next up in the big story, Labour MP Dawn Butler is accused of racism as she shares a post now deleted which says that the Tory leader Kemi Badenoch represents white supremacy in blackface. Should Sir Keir Starmer chuck her out of the party? That's next. Can we do the giveaway, by the way? Can we do the giveaway? I'd love to give something away, but we'll do that very soon. Folks, what do you think about that? Should this woman be chucked out of the Labour Party? We'll discuss that next.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Penelope's, which is situated in the sophisticated Hotel Armano in Covent Garden, delivers punchy dishes from the executive chef Fez Ozalgan. London-born, she's of Turkish Cypriot heritage, and at the tender age of 16, she enrolled at catering college. So, it's lovely to see you, Fez. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
So you're now in a very prestigious position. I'm always impressed that in the world of chefing, it's possible to get to very senior positions quite young, if you're good enough. Talent is rewarded, is it not?
Definitely, yeah. It does take a lot of hard work, for sure. But, yes.
When did you know that you wanted to be a chef?
Honestly, because my parents have a cafe in Barking. And I used to go there when I was younger, in school holidays and weekends to help them. And actually, I'll be honest, I just used to really admire everyone calling my dad chef, and that's what I wanted.
And what about your food inspirations? Because I believe the food that you produce now is what? Mediterranean influenced and also to some extent Middle East influenced?
Yeah, and Spanish as well at Penelope's, yeah. So our concept at Penelope's, our CEO, Ariel, he is Israeli, but he grew up in Marbella. So, yeah.
These are the great influences. Yeah. What have you brought here today?
OK, so we have our sea bream tartare, which is a really good inspiration of both Spanish and Israeli. It's marinated with harissa, and it's served with a really nice gazpacho sauce, caviar on top.
I wonder whether the camera can see that. It is the most gorgeous coloured sauce on top of my sea bream tartare. That's marvellous.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Now it's time for the big story, and the Labour MP Dawn Butler shared a controversial post, now removed from her account, accusing the new Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch of representing white supremacy in blackface. Butler appeared to endorse comments that also referred to Mrs Badenoch's election as a victory for racism. The post that she shared came from Nels Abbey, a London-based Nigerian journalist, and in an article entitled 7 Rules for Surviving a Kemi Badenoch Victory. It describes the new Conservative leader as a member of white supremacy's black collaborator class and defends controversial terms including coconuts, Uncle Tom, chalk ice and house N-word. Well, let's get reaction now from the multi-ethnic campaign group Don't Divide Us, which seeks the ultimate goal of a colourblind society. Khadija Khan is an advisory board member at Don't Divide Us and joins us now. Khadija, thank you so much for your time. What is your reaction to this story?
Thank you so much, Mark, for having me on your show. First of all, I would like to say congratulations, Kemi. You made history. This, in my opinion, is a historic moment that merits celebration for every one of us. As far as Dawn Butler's remarks are concerned, they are disgusting, reprehensible, appalling, divisive, and racist, and they must be condemned categorically, particularly at a time when the polarization in our society is ever growing. Dawn Butler is someone who made headlines lately for posting something that said that she is from the first ones. These remarks are incredibly unsettling and supremacist in all respects. And they speak volumes about Dawn Butler as a person and a politician. It's quite interesting that despite Kemi's refusal to engage in this woke identitarian theatrics, some media commentator, politicians, and so-called anti-racism activists, they have been talking about her skin color and background ever since she has been elected as the leader of the Conservative Party. This tells us a lot about a self-assured women who has set aside the stereotypical identity markers, no baggage, no victim card, no identity crisis, and with her hard work and determination, she deserves to be where she is today. And this also tells us about the woke liberal fringe that has devolved into this miserable state due to toxic identity politics and unhinged political correctness. This tells us that they need to set their own house in order before they even think about commenting on someone else's politics.
Indeed. Khadija, is there an assumption that black and minority ethnic Brits are a single homogenous group who should all think the same things?
No, this is not true. There is no homogeneous group such as ethnic minority community. There are communities, there are individuals, there are dissenting voices, and these racial slurs and disparaging remarks such as collaborators, traitor, coconut, or some other, things that I really hate to say or repeat. They are used to hold dissenting voices hostage within these communities by these vocal minority. And I would say that I'm not conservative or a Tory voter, but still I'm inspired by a conservative female leader's perseverance. And it is quite fair to say that I may not share her political views or policies, but I do admire her determination to serve her party and the country to the best of her abilities. And it is astonishing that people who are attacking her are the ones whose politics and activism are half focused on foreign affairs and half are about being a victim. They appear to be bad faith actors who have indoctrinated a generation of ethnic minority communities with this absurd notion of perpetual victimhood. They should be viewed as divisive, self-serving, and polarizing figures in British politics. And it goes without saying that the representation of ethnic minority communities in British politics, especially in Labour Party, is extremely depressing and uninspiring for the young people.
Indeed. Khadija, I want to ask you about this because a lot of these campaigners, these commentators, describe themselves as anti-racist. That's different from being against racism, which is most of us, isn't it? What is anti-racism? What marks that out as different?
This is ironic that these people who claim to be anti-racism activists, they are the ones who are trying to normalize racial slurs within their own communities in a bid to control the narrative. I mean, this is the same thing they claim to fight against. And this is the tragedy of this day and age, that people who should be held accountable for normalizing such racial slur and disparaging comments about people who refuse to toe the line, they are appreciated or applauded as anti-racism activists. I mean, I cannot see such absurdity being normalized, in such a convenient way.
Khadija, what a privilege to have you on the show. Look forward to catching up soon. My thanks to Khadija Khan, an advisory board member at Don't Divide Us. Now, folks, how would you like to win your entire Christmas this year? Well, we're giving you the chance to do just that with the Great British Giveaway. Here are all the details you'll need.
We could be delivering the perfect Christmas to you this year. First, we'll give you £20,025 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you £5,000 to spend on all of your Christmas presents. Christmas lunch, that's on us too. With a further £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. And the best news, you'll get it all in time for the big day. For your chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2 or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
As it's revealed he's making hundreds of millions of pounds from a property and business empire, is King Charles ripping off the British taxpayer? I'll be speaking to one of the best connected royal journalists in the country next.
Hello there, good evening. This is your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. We've been searching for the colour amongst the grey clouds this weekend, and that is continuing right until the very last hours of the day. Still a lot of grey skies for much of England, Wales and Northern Ireland throughout this evening and overnight. The odd spot of drizzle will be out there. The clearest skies will be reserved for the far north of Scotland. Here, temperatures will drop off a little bit more. Patchy frost is possible overnight. Elsewhere, though, that blanket of cloud will hold temperatures up on the positive side of things. With high pressure in charge, it does mean we have relatively light winds across the board tomorrow, but we are still plagued by all of this cloud. So the skies are going to be pretty grey and drab for many of us. Mostly dry, but I certainly can't rule out the odd spot of drizzle around in places, particularly around coast and over the hills where it could be quite murky at times. The best of the sunshine first thing will be likely again for the northern areas of Scotland. But once we get into the afternoon, hopefully we should start to see the cloud breaking up a bit more, particularly for the likes of Western Northern Ireland, parts of Western Wales, some potentially Cornwall as well. Also the far southeast of England, tapping into some of this clearing sky across France as well, allowing that sunshine to poke through later on as well. Temperatures will be roughly where we'd expect them to be for the time of year, topping up around 11 to 13 degrees Celsius, but certainly those that hold on to the cloud throughout the day will be feeling quite cool. As we head throughout the week, high pressure is still in charge. It's going to keep these weather fronts at bay out in the Atlantic, so it is again going to be mostly dry away from those outbreaks of drizzle that the cloud could be thick enough to produce in time. Tuesday morning could be quite foggy in places. Do watch out for potential a little bit of disruption around at times, but again, widespread grey skies for a lot of us, just hoping for those locations to potentially see a few brighter breaks in there at times. But really, the outlook throughout much of the week is for the cloud to remain, although temperatures may be coming up a little bit later on. Enjoy the evening. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Now for my take at 10, the vicious attacks on Kemi Badenoch demonstrate that she's already winning. That is my take at 10 in just 20 minutes' time. But first, King Charles and Prince William's private estates are reportedly taking millions of pounds from public bodies, including the NHS, state schools and the armed forces. An investigation by Channel 4's Dispatches and the Sunday Times looked at land and properties the two royals own through the duchies of Lancaster and Cornwall. Now, both estates are exempt from paying corporation tax or capital gains tax. It's claimed the Duchy of Lancaster last year agreed to a deal to store a new fleet of NHS electric ambulances in one of the estate's warehouses at a cost of £11.4 million over 15 years. They also report the Duchy of Cornwall has charged the Navy more than £1 million since 2004 to build and use jetties and more warships on the Cornish coastline. They've agreed leases with state schools, which will see the King pocket £600,000, plus claims that the Duchy agreed a £37 million deal to lease at Dartmoor Prison to the Ministry of Justice. Nice work if you can get it. So, are King Charles and Prince William ripping off the British taxpayer? Let's get the views of one of the best-connected royal journalists in the country and Prince Harry biographer, Angela Levin. Angela, lovely to see you.
Nice to see you, thank you.
Has Charles been hung out to dry here?
Well, I think that what it is that somebody wanted to know the details of this. And the very fact that it's been open for them to see tells you that nobody's trying to hide anything. Actually, nothing has changed so much that it's been hidden under the carpet. And I think that speaks enough for it, really.
Although you and I and my viewers and listeners are funding these tax breaks for one of the richest men in the country, is that appropriate?
Well, they don't take like that because they give back. I mean, for example, the King has given £100 million for charities, various charities. He's giving money away all the time. He's not a sort of greedy man. You know, he has his clothes sewn up if there's a hole or something like that. And I think that he... it goes back to the 18th century. And the King then would give senior people lots of land. And sometimes the land was no good at all in exchange for people to fight, right? And other times it grows up and it's wonderful. And a lot of the land in these two areas, which is the two private estates in Lancaster and Duchess of Cornwall, William has the Duchess of Cornwall, has done very well. There's loads of things there. But like any landlord, if you sit on it, you have to pay. That's how it is. But I just looked at other people who've done things by land. Paul Raymond in Soho, for example.
The famous pawn king and impresario.
Yes, it was. Soho was awful. That area was awful. But he had 400 buildings and 650 million he made. without exaggerating, it's just extraordinary. The Duke of Westminster, because he's got Mayfair and Belgravia, £8 billion, and Oxbridge colleges have 3.5 billion, 126,000 places.
The Church of England own property as well?
Yes, you can do it a lot. So it's actually wrong, I think, to call the King and William, not because they do give away masses of money. They're very generous, and they believe that all these things, you know, if you are on somebody's land, then you pay for it. I don't think there's anything crooked about the whole thing.
How entrepreneurial is Charles?
Well, I think he is, but he has advisors, you know, people who give him advice and tell him what to do. I mean, when you are in that sort of position that he's in, he has good advice for everyone. He gets top doctors, he gets top advisors about money, and they discuss how to make the money. I mean, what they get in a year, which costs each of us £1.80 a year to help them live, they try and make the rest of it out of the money that they can do wherever they can. You know,
£1.80. I think that's less than Gary Lineker, isn't it? I mean, it's you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, aren't you?
Yes, I think there's a sort of nasty aura about this.
Do you think Channel 4 and the Sunday Times are demonstrating jealousy here, or is this a hatchet job journalistically?
I think it's a hatchet job. I think Channel 4 doesn't like the royal family, and they make any possible time to whack them. But the Times not so much. But I think it makes a very good front-page story.
The Queen...
And I think it will...
Was it in the 90s, sorry to interrupt you, Angela, was it in the 90s that the Queen decided to start paying income tax?
Yes, it was the Queen who does that. They now do. They pay the highest 45%
the top rate
income tax on the top rate.
And that was a big moment when the Queen decided to do that.
Yes.
And probably cemented her popularity. Do you think that the King will need to make some kind of arrangement of that nature in relation to his land properties?
No, I don't think so. I can think what he does, he uses the land in order to then give other people the money.
But should he be taking funds from the National Health Service for the storing of ambulances or from state schools?
Well, I think if they were going anywhere, they would have to pay money. A landlord would take money wherever they were. Charles asked much less than they would do at any other landlord. And I think that that's perfectly OK. I think it's just you can't actually have those places without paying for them.
Will William be worried about this publicity?
I think so, yes. He's very sensitive to it because he actually doesn't feel he wants to take money. He wants to make homelessness people have home. And I think that he's done very well on that. But it's just one of the things they said, that things got very mouldy in the houses, and they said he wasn't looking after his people weren't looking after it. But it turned out that the woman there hasn't been paying anything since 2005, and she wouldn't let anybody come in, and she wouldn't complain it in writing. So you see somebody saying, actually, it's disgusting because it's all mouldy, but actually this woman should have been chucked out much earlier than anyone of the royal family would have chucked her out. So I think you have to take these things with a pinch of salt, sometimes quite a large pinch of salt.
Angela, always a thrill to see you. Thank you so much for coming in and telling us about this latest royal scandal. A scandal or just an entrepreneurial monarch? What do you think? gbnews.com/your say. Now, next up, is Donald Trump days away from an extraordinary political comeback and a glorious return to the White House? I'll be asking one of his senior advisors next.
Court cases.
A presidential dropout.
Assassination attempts.
This has been a US election like no other.
And if the polls are correct, it's on a knife edge.
On Tuesday night, stay up with us as the drama unfolds and America decides their next president.
We'll discuss what it means for them, for the world, and for our special relationship. America Decides, Tuesday night from 11.
Only on GB News.
every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Right, up and down the country, many parents are preparing or have indeed already sent their child off to university.
Indeed, but sometimes it can leave parents struggling to cope with the, quote, empty nest syndrome their child leaves behind. So joining us now to discuss how to cope with sending off your sprogs to university, or not so sprogs, is broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. Good morning, Lucy. Nice to see you this early. This is a real thing, isn't it? It's our colleague Paul Coitz, our sports expert, describes it as grief, sending your young adults off to uni and leaving the nest for the first time.
Yes, I think grief is the right word because it's an ending. And it's not just an ending with your relationship with your child. It changes from here on in. But it also is very much about your identity. Your identity as a parent is weakening. You'll always be that child's parent, but you're not going to have the same involvement on a daily basis. And so you're left to think, OK, well, what does my life look like going forward? What's my relationship? If you're in a relationship with a partner, how is that going to change? And like all elements of grief, there's going to be a bit of a process. There's going to be that transition period where you adjust to your new life, just as your sprogs, as you call them, are adjusting to their new, exciting phase of their life.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Listen, a quick response to my conversation about the royals. Is King Charles ripping off the great British public? David says, Channel 4 are as usual muck spreading. The Duchy's accounts have been available to the public for scrutiny for years. It is political rabble-rousing, nothing secret here. There you go. Well, thank you for that. Well, with just 2 days to go, is Donald Trump on the verge of an extraordinary political comeback and a glorious return to the White House? Or does a shock Iowa poll suggest that Kamala Harris is about to make history and become America's first female president? Well, let's get the views of Fox News broadcaster and advisor to President Trump, Jason D. Meister. Jason, good to see you. How do you see the race at this late stage?
Thanks for having me. Yeah, you're going to see the greatest political comeback in history Tuesday night when Donald Trump wins the presidency once again. I don't think it's a question of if at this point, it's a question of by how many electoral college votes. And I predict over 300 electoral college votes. You have to remember, and I have to put a little bit of context here, the Democratic Party did not run a competitive primary process. They removed Joe Biden, who had over 14 million primary votes, and they replaced him with his vice presidential candidate, Kamala Harris. I don't believe that Kamala Harris would have ever been the Democratic nominee if they ran a competitive process here in the United States. And I think they're going to be delivered a blow.
What is the mood of the Trump camp right now?
Well, from the internal polling that we're seeing, the low propensity voters, the voters that haven't actually voted in the last 4 election cycles, are overwhelmingly going to the polls and voting for Donald J. Trump. If we look at just Pennsylvania, which I think is one of the most important key swing states here in the United States of America, 21% of voters that are voting for Donald Trump never voted in the last 4 election cycles. And so what that really means to your viewers is that when you look at these polls across the United States, any poll, it doesn't really matter, whatever poll you look at, a lot of these polls have Donald Trump and Kamala Harris tied or having Donald Trump up by 1 or 2 votes or 1 or 2 percentage points. If they're not capturing that 20% of those voters that are now voting, which haven't voted in the last 4 election cycles, that's a significant move that the polling is not picking up in these likely voters.
Now, the state of Iowa should be a Republican stronghold. Are you concerned about a shock new poll suggesting Harris is in the lead there?
Not in the least bit. That Iowa poll, I believe, is a psyop. We saw this with Hillary Clinton. She was beating Donald Trump by 96% going into Election Day, and he won overwhelmingly. If you look at where Donald Trump is polling today versus 2020 and 2016, he's never polled better than he has right now. Look, the Democratic Party has thrown everything they could possibly throw at Donald J. Trump. They tried to ban him, censor him, gag him, arrest him, indict him, impeach him. They tried to throw him in prison for over 700 years using unconstitutional, illegal lawfare. And then there was 2 assassination attempts on his life. And everything they threw at Donald Trump has only made him politically stronger. And I think that the American people are too smart. They understand what life was like under Donald Trump's leadership and what life has been like under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And the bottom line is they can remove Joe Biden, but the Kamala Harris ticket still owns every failure of the Biden-Harris administration. When you look at inflation that's hit a 40-year high, when you look at the open southern border that's flooded tens of millions of illegals into this country, you look at the fentanyl that is pouring over our border, when you look at the crime in all the Democrat-run cities, Americans have had enough, and they want Donald Trump back in office with his leadership making America great again.
Of course, Jason, his critics would argue that Donald Trump is a divisive and dangerous figure and a threat to democracy. But it's all about opinions, isn't it? Are there any last-minute surprises to come before polling day, do you think?
Oh, there's always last-minute surprises. But going back to that point you just made about the quote-unquote threat to democracy and his divisiveness, look, I think that the party that is using illegal, unconstitutional lawfare, the party that tried to assassinate Trump, the party that is calling their opposition...
You can't say the party tried to assassinate Donald Trump.
Well, we'll get to the bottom of that in the Trump 2.0 White House. But I mean, leaving that aside,
Tim Walz wasn't the shooter.
A party that calls their opposition Nazis and garbage. Yeah, that's divisiveness in this country. A party that dismisses 14 million votes in a Democratic primary and commits a coup on a sitting U.S. president. That is the party that is a threat to democracy. And I think that they will be delivered an electoral avalanche in November. In just a couple days.
If it doesn't go Trump's way, will you call foul, and his supporters will they claim it's been stolen once again?
Look, I think we have to watch very closely, make sure this election is fair and free. There's a lot of shenanigans going on already in the pre-early voting. There's been a lot of stuff happening, but I think that the American people, whether it's the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, they want a free and fair election. They want to know that the will of the people, right, has been decided. And I think that you should have a Democrat on and ask them that same question to make sure that they're okay when Donald Trump takes back the presidency.
Yes, it will be an interesting answer. Jason, lovely to meet you. Enjoy Tuesday night, and perhaps we can catch up after the result when you may well be celebrating. My thanks to Fox News broadcaster and advisor to President Trump, Jason D. Meister. Well, in my Take at 10, appalling vicious attacks on Kemi Badenoch this weekend demonstrate that she's already got the left running scared. Their nightmare has only just begun. Bring popcorn. See you in it soon.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar. sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. This is your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. We've been searching for the colour amongst the grey clouds this weekend, and that is continuing right until the very last hours of the day. Still a lot of grey skies for much of England, Wales and Northern Ireland throughout this evening and overnight. The odd spot of drizzle will be out there. The clearest skies will be reserved for the far north of Scotland. Here, temperatures will drop off a little bit more. Patchy frost is possible overnight. Elsewhere, though, that blanket of cloud will hold temperatures up on the positive side of things. With high pressure in charge, it does mean we have relatively light winds across the board tomorrow, but we are still plagued by all of this cloud. So the skies are going to be pretty grey and drab for many of us. Mostly dry, but I certainly can't rule out the odd spot of drizzle around in places, particularly around coast and over the hills where it could be quite murky at times. The best of the sunshine first thing will be likely again for the northern areas of Scotland. But once we get into the afternoon, hopefully we should start to see the cloud breaking up a bit more, particularly for the likes of Western Northern Ireland, parts of Western Wales, some potentially Cornwall as well. Also the far southeast of England, tapping into some of this clearing sky across France as well, allowing that sunshine to poke through later on as well. Temperatures will be roughly where we'd expect them to be for the time of year, topping up around 11 to 13 degrees Celsius, but certainly those that hold on to the cloud throughout the day will be feeling quite cool. As we head throughout the week, high pressure is still in charge. It's going to keep these weather fronts at bay out in the Atlantic, so it is again going to be mostly dry away from those outbreaks of drizzle that the cloud could be thick enough to produce in time. Tuesday morning could be quite foggy in places. Do watch out for potential a little bit of disruption around at times, but again, widespread grey skies for a lot of us, just hoping for those locations to potentially see a few brighter breaks in there at times. But really, the outlook throughout much of the week is for the cloud to remain, though temperatures may be coming up a little bit later on. Enjoy the evening. Bye-bye.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could win Christmas on us this year. There's cash, £20,025 in tax-free cash to make your new year go with a bang. There's also £5,000 to spend on all the gifts. We've also got Christmas lunch for you, with £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. And finally, a festive GB News goodie bag. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Court cases.
A presidential dropout.
Assassination attempts.
This has been a US election like no other.
And if the polls are correct, it's on a knife edge.
On Tuesday night, stay up with us as the drama unfolds and America decides their next president.
We'll discuss what it means for them, for the world, and for our special relationship. America Decides, Tuesday night from 11.
Only on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. It is 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online. In the United Kingdom and across the world, this is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my take at 10, appalling vicious attacks on Kemi Badenoch this weekend demonstrate that she's already got the left running scared. Let me tell you, their nightmare has only just begun. Bring popcorn. Is Nigel Farage scared of Kemi Badenoch? I'll be asking Reform UK spokesperson Anne Widdecombe. Plus, at tomorrow's papers and tonight's top pundits, for ringside action, we have former Conservative MP and now much poorer farmer Neil Parish, former advisor to Boris Johnson Lord Coulvier Ranger, and former Labour Party candidate Susie Stride. So my take at 10 on the way. The vicious attacks on Kemi Badenoch demonstrate that she's already winning. So we'll get to that in just a moment, but first the news headlines and Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you. The top stories. Kemi Badenoch has made her first senior appointment as the new Conservative Party leader. It's understood that Dame Rebecca Harris will be the party's chief whip, replacing Stuart Andrew. The job of chief whip is to maintain party discipline and try to ensure MPs vote as the leadership would like them to. Meanwhile, Kemi Badenoch says she'll tell hard truths to both the country and her party as she began her first full day as Conservative leader. She also says Partygate was overblown and the government shouldn't have fined people for everyday activities during the COVID lockdown. Kemi Badenoch won more than 53,000 votes in the contest, while her rival, Robert Jenrick, received 41,000 votes. Ms Badenoch is expected to name her full shadow cabinet in the coming days ahead of their first meeting on Tuesday. Elsewhere, Labour MP Dawn Butler shared a social media post accusing Kemi Badenoch of representing white supremacy in blackface shortly before she was elected as the new Tory leader. The Brent East MP has since deleted the repost from her X account. Neither Downing Street nor Dawn Butler have made any comments.
She's a race baiter. Why has she still got the whip?
Look, that's up to Labour.
What do you think, genuinely?
I genuinely think that, given what she said, she should have the whip removed from her. There should be some discipline and some disciplinary measure against this kind of really hateful divisiveness.
I was reminded...
That was former Conservative Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng there. Rachel Reeves says the money raised through changes to inheritance tax to farmers will go back to public services. The Chancellor says farmers also rely on good public services, including the NHS and schools, adding the funds generated by these tax changes will also put public finances on a firm footing. When challenged by Camilla Tominey this morning on the inheritance tax changes, Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury James Murray said the existing features of the inheritance tax system will still apply. Now, protests have erupted in Valencia as King Felipe visited areas affected by recent flash flooding. Residents shouted murderers when the King and Queen arrived in the area, and mud was also thrown towards the monarch. The deadliest flash floods in Spain's modern history have killed at least 214 people. Dozens are still unaccounted for. A joint investigation from both Channel 4 and the Sunday Times has revealed the full details of the property estates owned by the King and Prince William. The investigation shows the vast array of commercial property the royal families built up from the time of medieval monarchs. Their contracts with public bodies are said to include a £37 million agreement with the Ministry of Justice and an £11.4 million deal with Guy's and St Thomas's NHS Trust. A spokesman for the Duchy of Cornwall said it was a private estate with a commercial imperative, while the Duchy of Lancaster said their business complies with all relevant UK legislation. Well, that comes as Prince William travels to South Africa this week for his Earthshot Prize award ceremony. The prizes hope to recognise environmental solutions to repair the planet. And as you know, there are now just 2 days to go until the US election, and shock polling from a traditionally Republican Iowa has placed Democratic candidate Kamala Harris ahead of Donald Trump by 3 points. It comes as Kamala Harris appeared overnight in a comedy sketch on Saturday Night Live in New York, where comedian Maya Rudolph dressed as the current vice president. Polls elsewhere in states such as Pennsylvania and Michigan show that the two candidates are tied ahead of Election Day on Tuesday. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. It is back to Mark Dolan tonight.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
My thanks to the outstanding Tatiana Sanchez. So the paper's at 10:30, and here's a question for you to kick off the hour. Is Nigel Farage afraid of Kemi Badenoch? I'll be asking Reform UK spokesperson Anne Widdecombe. But we start with my take at 10. They say that you should judge someone by their friends. Well, I beg to differ. I say you judge them by their enemies. And given the nasty, vicious things that have been said about the new Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch this weekend, she must be an outstanding person and absolutely the right choice for the top job. It's ironic that the woke left, who claim to occupy the moral high ground, find hate and racism everywhere, except when it's staring them in the mirror. Like Labour MP Dawn Butler, who shared a since-deleted post accusing Badenoch of being a symbol of, and I quote, white supremacy in blackface. Meanwhile, the Labour MP Zara Sultana accused Kemi Badenoch of being far-right. Well, that's the latest slur against Conservatives. Get used to it. And she described the new Tory leader as one of the most nasty and divisive figures in British politics. This is a woman in a glass house with an XL sack of rocks. How about this one from political commentator Esheru Kwaku? This is about Kemi. He said, this woman has black skin, but she doesn't identify with black people. In fact, this is probably the worst thing for black people in Britain. It goes on. Academic and BBC regular Kehinde Andrews congratulates Kemi and then says that she is the shining ebony example that the psychosis of whiteness is not reserved for those with white skin. These people aren't well, are they? But of course they are the good people, so never forget that. How about this from a charming Guardian journalist called Francis Ryan? Kemi is genuinely one of the nastiest, most divisive people in British politics. That she'll now have the platform of leader of the opposition is a deeply worrying result and a depressing insight into the gutter from which she would govern. Yes, democracy and people you don't agree with having a platform. It's so worrying, isn't it? How about this from Labour MP and posh daughter of aristocrats, there's a surprise, Stella Creasy. Having previously complained about not being able to go to enough parties because she's an MP, she congratulates Badenoch before twisting the knife, drawing attention to the horror of the politics and approach she represents and will bring to doing the job. The horror! Gosh, would that be worse than the horror of Wednesday's Labour budget, which has made all of us poorer? I guess Stella is one of the few people in this country who can actually afford this Labour government. Although all of this toxic vitriol can't be fun for the new leader of the opposition, Badenoch won't care. And frankly, she should be flattered. She's already got the left rattled. They can't stand the fact that she's now the leader of the Tory party because they can tell she's a star. They can tell she's a great communicator. They can tell that she's going to move the dial politically. Why do the woke left reserve such a particular level of rage towards black and minority ethnic Conservatives? How dare Brits from a black or minority ethnic background believe in low taxes, aspiration and business-friendly policies that create national income to pay for public services? How dare they think that there are just 2 sexes rather than 100? How dare they love this country and defend its complex but largely glorious history? How dare they believe in individual self-responsibility? How dare they believe that it should pay to work? How dare they believe that the spiralling national debt is unethical as it saddles future generations with the bill? Well, we've been there before, of course. The Labour MP Rupa Huq said that the highly talented and crazily clever former Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng didn't sound like a black man speaking when she listened to his arguments on the radio. So what are a black British man's arguments or opinions? Do educate me. She went on to say that he was just superficially black. Wow. The formidable Priti Patel was vilified for being a Conservative of colour and characterised as a bull with a ring in her nose by a now sacked Guardian cartoonist. And inexplicably, a pro-Palestine protester was acquitted of a racially aggravated public order offence after describing Rishi Sunak as a coconut. Now, what does that mean? Well, coconut means that he's brown on the outside but white on the inside. A metaphor so egregiously racist, it's hard to fathom. But the good news is that with this vile commentary about the new Tory leader, these people reveal themselves as anything but the Be Kind crowd. And their claims to be anti-racist are quite hilarious, given their obsessive focus on skin colour. They're not anti-racists, they're bullies, they're bigots, and they're wrong. Kemi Badenoch has already got the left running scared, and she's annoying all of the right people whose masks have slipped this weekend. They are furious that she is now leading the Conservative Party. Well, that's nothing. Wait till she's Prime Minister. Lol. Your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. First, tonight's top pundits. Former Conservative MP and farmer Neil Parish. That's right, he's a former farmer. He's in a bad mood tonight. I can't imagine why. We also have former advisor to Boris Johnson, political commentator Lord Coulvier Ranger, and former Labour Party prospective parliamentary candidate Susie Stride. Great to see all three of you. Neil, let me start with you. Dawn Butler, do you think she should still be a Labour MP?
I think the whip should be suspended and she should, at the very least, apologise for what she's done. I think Kemi will put it all behind her and just get on with the job. I think it's a case, really, but it is hypocrisy. And that's what I think people dislike about it. And, you know, I mean, we don't go around saying, you know, he's white, but perhaps he's black inside. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is pure racism, I'm afraid. And you know, I mean, Kemi has got the character now, I think, to get stuck in, and people will like her, and that's what the left are worried about. And it'll be interesting to see in the minute what Nigel Farage thinks about it as well, won't it?
Well, indeed. Now, Coulvier, the people I mentioned, Rupa Huq, Dawn Butler and others, they're not here to defend themselves, and I've got no doubt that no racist intent was meant, but is it felt?
It is felt. And look, I'll take this from a personal perspective. I've spent over 20 years in politics, and as a Conservative, and I always faced, on a daily, weekly basis, someone from the left implying that I couldn't be a Tory. Surely I'm in the wrong party. And then getting to the point where when they accepted that I was a Tory, well, you can't be the right kind of Asian, Sikh or black person because you're in the wrong party. Yeah. They just can't compute the fact that you can have different opinions. It's not a politics of identity, it's a politics of beliefs and policies. Yeah. And the left just can't accept that because they feel a sense of ownership to certain communities, and historically they have felt that. Therefore, when that is challenged by people from those communities, appearing to be on a different political side to them, they just find it doesn't compute. And I think that is terrible, and that's what these comments come from. The lack of acceptance that people have individual beliefs that don't mean that they go with a herd. And fundamentally, also, it's a nail in that coffin of the argument that was being proposed, that the Conservative Party members are racist.
Yeah.
You know, this absolutely firmly demonstrates that the Conservative Party looks for the best person, the person that's fit for the job. And I think that's what we should be so proud about, having selected Kemi.
Susie, I know you're quite shocked by this post, which has now been removed from Dawn Butler's social media. I'm not one for cancel culture, but do you think there should be some action from the Prime Minister?
I think, look, there's a bigger problem here, isn't there? Like the kind of level of the way that people speak in the public sphere, I just find it shocking.
Yeah.
And to be honest, if you go into a secondary school and you speak to teenagers, they find it shocking. And for me, there's a bigger problem. Now, I think this is a disgrace. I don't think you should, play the person, challenge the policy, criticise the policy, hold the policy to account, but don't pick on these little things because, it's nasty and it's just low. But also there's a bigger thing here. It's not actually good for democracy. It's not good for democracy because, to be honest, good people don't want to engage in that kind of thing.
It's a bit like Donald Trump being called Hitler by his opponents in America. It's unhelpful rhetoric, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and look, what I want to say is, because I know we're saying, the left and the woke and all this kind of stuff, but I don't think it's about the left.
And it's not the whole of the left, is it?
I am whatever you want to call it, centre-ground, left-wing commentator. If you read the comments, my friends read the comments. My sister said to me, Susie, don't read the comments. From me being on GB News over the last 6... Oh, yeah. Some of the things that people say, it's so nasty. Now, listen, I'm going to be honest with you. I actually, some of it I laugh at, some of it I shrug off, but some of them I'm like, oh my days, these people, what's wrong with them? They're so nasty. And
not my viewers and listeners who, let me tell you, are loving you tonight.
But what I want to say is, it's not about...
They're not sure about Neil, but
it's not about the...
Acquired taste, don't panic.
I think what I'm saying is, it's not about the left, it's not about the right, it's about something has gone very wrong, where we have dehumanised people.
I agree.
And
although briefly, is there an issue with people of colour having conservative views? Why do they get such a kicking?
Yeah, and I do, and I think you're absolutely right on that. And, I don't know why that is, but again, I think it's wrong, and I think we do need to challenge it. But I'm going to be honest with you, if you don't challenge... For me, the press and the politicians have a responsibility, which they have let down. I think they've let down. Because what we're talking about here, we're talking about people that actually people should look up to, and they've stopped looking up to.
OK, cool, Vera, I want to come back to this. So, briefly, final thoughts at this stage.
Well, I was mentioned about the reaction you get on media, social media. For the 20 years in politics, when I went on any media channel, Sky, BBC, all the others that are available, I would not look at social media afterwards. The criticism, the abuse, the kind of things that would be said to me are generally driven by a race-based agenda until I came on GB News. That was the first time that actually I felt a certain alignment of viewpoint, people looking at the views I was expressing in a community, rather than maybe this gentleman in a turban, Sikh, Asian, whatever it may be.
That just shows that actually we need GB News in order to put forward proper views and proper debate.
Yeah.
Well, that's it.
I don't think it's...
Even though you have been rude to me.
I don't think it's particularly about GB News. I think, for me, it's just about the social media.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that's it. Well, listen, we're going to come back to this at 10:30 because it's the biggest story in tomorrow's papers. And look, once again, let me reiterate that Dawn Butler, Rupa Huq and others that I've mentioned in my Take at 10 aren't here to defend themselves. And I'm sure they would very swiftly argue they didn't seek to appear racist or to offend Mrs Badenoch in that sort of racist manner. And, of course, it is all about opinions. And is it a question of free speech? Let me know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. Plus, racism is a terrible blight on our society. Are they right to be pointing that out? Listen, we'll get to that at 10:30 with the papers. But how would you like to win your entire Christmas this year? Well, we're giving you the chance to do just that with the very latest Great British Giveaway. Here are the details.
We could be delivering the perfect Christmas to you this year. First, we'll give you £20,025 in tax-free cash. Then we'll give you £5,000 to spend on all of your Christmas presents. Christmas lunch, that's on us too. With a further £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. Finally, a GB News Christmas goodie bag. And the best news, you'll get it all in time for the big day. For your chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9 bubble tea. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Blinds close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Is Nigel Farage scared of Kemi Badenoch? I'll be asking Reform UK spokesperson Anne Widdecombe next.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Her name is synonymous with fashion. Karen Millen, the high street designer whose dresses have been worn by some of the world's most famous women, including the Princess of Wales.
Yes, but in a recent Daily Mail interview conducted by our showbiz juggernaut, as I call her, Steph Tetchy, 63-year-old Karen confessed she isn't immune from worries about her appearance.
Well, this summer, Karen took the plunge with a £35,000 facelift using the very latest surgical techniques. Now, to hear more of her story, we're delighted to be joined by Karen herself and consultant plastic surgeon Dr. Tunç Tiryaki, co-founder of the London Regenerative Institute. So, how did you two get together?
That was a meeting at the Parliament, wasn't it?
It was, actually, yeah, through mutual friends, really.
So you already knew of Tunç and you knew his expertise. How did you come to the decision to kind of go ahead with this? I was reading the Mail article and apparently one day you looked in the mirror. And I've heard this story so many times before,
Yeah, I know,
from not least my mum and my nan.
Yeah.
And they said they looked in the mirror and thought, goodness me.
I
you
know. I think it's that menopausal thing when suddenly things just change. And, yeah, for me, it was coming out of lockdown almost, where I was probably on the back end of menopause. And I just, suddenly looked in the mirror and it was like, oh, my God, what's happened to me?
Because I guess you still, I mean, for me, I'm 35, I still feel like a 20-year-old or even an 18-year-old. Does that change as you get into sort of your...
Unfortunately not, right?
Well, it does change to a certain extent, but, I've always looked after myself, so I've always kept fit and looked after my skin. So, it did come as a bit of a shock. I mean, I know, obviously, ageing happens to us all and we have to embrace that, but there's a certain amount that we have to put up with and then, other things can step in.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, a big reaction to my take at 10. The vicious attacks on Kemi Badenoch demonstrate that she's already winning. On the message board, gbnews.com/your say. David, good evening, David. How are you? David has said the left wing now not only have difficulties identifying women, they can't understand why a person with black skin doesn't agree with them. Double whammy. Kemi is a woman. How about this from Dennis? Stella Creasy, another joke Labour MP. Where do Labour get these no-mark, taxpayer-funded, bilge-spreading merchants from? Surely the MP selection process that lands us with these inadequates needs looking at. Well, listen, Dennis, you're entitled to your view. I happen to understand and have heard, certainly, that Stella Creasy is a very popular local MP that does a lot for her constituents. So I part company with a tweet she sent about Kemi Badenoch, but I think she's a decent MP. But look, Dennis, you're entitled to your views on that one. And Shooty says, Mark, Dawn Butler has a history of this. It's not a one-off. So if she apologised, it's because she wants to keep her money. The whip should be removed, and then her constituents should call for a recall, forcing a by-election. Thank you for that, folks. Well, following her election as Conservative Party leader, Kemi Badenoch has dismissed Reform UK as a spoiler party and has previously rejected the idea of any partnership with this new insurgent political force. Meanwhile, writing in the Daily Telegraph newspaper this weekend, their leader, Nigel Farage, says that this Badenoch win shows an unchanged, unreformed Tory party. That there he is, there's Nigel, in a bit of a sandwich with myself and Lord David Frost. But does the big man protest too much? Deep down, is Nigel Farage scared of Kemi Badenoch? Let's get the views of someone that isn't scared of anyone or anything. Former Conservative Government Minister and now Reform UK spokesperson Anne Widdecombe. Anne, good to see you. Is Mr Farage looking over his shoulder this weekend?
Absolutely not. If anybody's afraid of anybody else, it will be Kemi afraid of reform, because she knows what we can do, because we show what we can do. And the reason that she has such a pathetic little number of MPs at the moment is precisely because not she, but the Conservatives were deserted on a large scale by people who preferred our policies. And the other reason why I think she should be afraid is that we do have those policies, very clear policies on things like immigration. The thing that distinguished Kemi's campaign for the leadership was the total absence of policies. So, no, I don't think we're afraid of Kemi. I think she's got good reason to be afraid of us.
And MPs eliminated centrist James Cleverly, and the membership had a choice of two true Conservatives. The party has returned to its roots and found its political compass, hasn't it?
But it's still divided. That's the point, Mark. Not everybody in Parliament agreed with that choice. Robert Jenrick got a large number of votes. Yes, Kemi had a comfortable majority, but he still got a very respectable number of votes. Partly, I think, because he did at least advance policies, which is more than Kemi did. When they eliminated James Cleverly, again, he got a very respectable number of votes. So I don't think you can say that the whole party's moved. And that'll be one of the challenges that Kemi Badenoch will have. She's inherited, she didn't cause it, she's inherited a massively and deeply and quite bitterly divided party.
And Mr Farage has said in the past that Kemi Badenoch has been quite rude to him. Do you think she should make amends? Should she send him some cigars or a keg of beer?
I can't see her doing that, but I think she may come to regret, as I think Boris came to regret, that she was so dismissive of reform. I think that's a big mistake on her part, but no, she's got to find that out for herself.
And why do you call it a mistake? Do you think it would have implications if the leader of the Conservative Party needed support in some way from Reform UK? Has she burnt her bridges?
Well, I think she's made it very difficult any future cooperation, but we weren't seeking that anyway. What we are seeking is to replace the Tories as the opposition. And we're making big strides. And I think that throughout this Parliament, we shall see during by-elections that we will continue to make those strides. So, no, I mean, I think the one thing that the last election showed was that we actually could win, that we could win seats. Everybody said, oh, you won't get any seats in there. I get a lot of votes, you won't get any seats. Oh, we got more votes than the Lib Dems. And we got seats in Parliament even under the first-past-the-post system, which makes it mightily difficult for what you describe as insurgent parties.
And the Conservatives regrouping and reform growing is surely good news only for Sir Keir Starmer. Look at that budget on Wednesday. Are you comfortable with the idea of a decade of Labour rule?
We won't get a decade of Labour rule for the very simple reason that I think that budget, OK, it's got another 4 years to go, and sometimes the electoral memory can be a bit short, but I don't think it's that short. And I think that budget has, signed the death warrant for the next election. Labour are not going to win.
In four or 5 years' time, it will be a simple choice, won't it? It's going to be Prime Minister Starmer or Prime Minister Badenoch. Which would you choose?
It will be Prime Minister Starmer or Prime Minister Farage, and I know which I'd choose.
And have you had a drink tonight?
No, I'm looking forward to one after this show.
Well, listen, I think, and with due respect, I think you've been on the cooking sherry early for more than medicinal purposes. Are you telling me, in all seriousness, that Nigel Farage could be Britain's next Prime Minister?
I'm telling you in all seriousness that I do believe that we can replace the Tories as the main party of opposition and therefore, the consequences flow from that.
But how does that happen? I agree with you, Anne. I think reform will grow. I think reform votes will grow at the next election. I think they could double, but I think the Conservatives will strengthen as well. So the two parties who more or less think the same things and have the same values are going to cancel each other out.
Well, you have many strengths, but I don't think you're much of a prophet.
And wise words, and I wish we had longer. I think at some point we should just do 2 hours with Anne, because always compelling, always entertaining. Anne, thank you, sir. I think we might have had a glitch on the line, but listen, a brilliant conversation, and I will see you, of course, in a week's time. Anne Widdecombe there, the jewel in the crown of Mark Dolan tonight, every Sunday. Next up, the papers with my panel. Don't go anywhere.
Hello there, good evening. This is your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. We've been searching for the colour amongst the grey clouds this weekend, and that is continuing right until the very last hours of the day. Still a lot of grey skies for much of England, Wales and Northern Ireland throughout this evening and overnight. The odd spot of drizzle will be out there. The clearest skies will be reserved for the far north of Scotland. Here, temperatures will drop off a little bit more. Patchy frost is possible overnight. Elsewhere, though, that blanket of cloud will hold temperatures up on the positive side of things. With high pressure in charge, it does mean we have relatively light winds across the board tomorrow, but we are still plagued by all of this cloud. So the skies are going to be pretty grey and drab for many of us. Mostly dry, but I certainly can't rule out the odd spot of drizzle around in places, particularly around coast and over the hills where it could be quite murky at times. The best of the sunshine first thing will be likely again for the northern areas of Scotland. But once we get into the afternoon, hopefully we should start to see the cloud breaking up a bit more, particularly for the likes of Western Northern Ireland, parts of Western Wales, some potentially Cornwall as well. Also the far southeast of England, tapping into some of this clearing sky across France as well, allowing that sunshine to poke through later on as well. Temperatures will be roughly where we'd expect them to be for the time of year, topping up around 11 to 13 degrees Celsius, but certainly those that hold on to the cloud throughout the day will be feeling quite cool. As we head throughout the week, high pressure is still in charge. It's going to keep these weather fronts at bay out in the Atlantic, so it is again going to be mostly dry away from those outbreaks of drizzle that the cloud could be thick enough to produce in time. Tuesday morning could be quite foggy in places. Do watch out for potential a little bit of disruption around at times, but again, widespread grey skies for a lot of us, just hoping for those locations to potentially see a few brighter breaks in there at times. But really, the outlook throughout much of the week is for the cloud to remain, though temperatures may be coming up a little bit later on. Enjoy the evening. Bye-bye.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, let's take a look at tomorrow's papers. And we start with the Mail newspaper, that is Monday's Mail. And here is the headline. As Kemi vows complete opposite approach to Labour and declares business, not government, will lead our revival, a leader who knows how to get Britain's economy booming. Kemi Badenoch tonight vowed to tell hard truths to her party and the country after being crowned Tory leader. In her first interview as Conservative Party leader yesterday, or that was today, of course, on the BBC, Mrs Badenoch said she wanted to show that the unity is back in the Tories, and she was very optimistic about what the party can pitch to voters. She said she'd get back to telling the truth by talking about the genuine trade-offs that we need to have as a country in order to move forward. Also, royal exclusive, moving full inside story of the King's cancer fight. This is an update to Robert Hardman's brilliant book about King Charles. And I understand that Robert Hardman will be joining me next weekend on Mark Dolan tonight to tell us about that brilliant updated book about the royal family. Next up, the Sun newspaper, Windsor Lodge ruin, grand mould Duke of York. Andrew's home damp and crumbling, cash woes as King cuts £1 million grants. Next up, let's have a look. We've got the Times. Starmer, world must wake up to severity of the migration crisis. British investigators will help French prosecutors to jail people smugglers after the Prime Minister announced he would double the amount of money to tackle the Channel migrant crisis. The £75 million funding package will also pay for advanced maritime drones that will form part of the beefed-up surveillance and tracking technology available for Sir Keir Starmer's new Border Security Command, to help monitor smuggling activity in real time. James Dyson blasts spiteful budget. Sir James Dyson, one of Britain's leading businessmen, has told Rachel Reeves that raising inheritance tax on farms and family businesses would be the death of entrepreneurship. Telegraph, Reeves, we can't afford farmers to die tax-free. And Trump attacks fake poll after late Harris surge. Queen feels Spain's fury. That's Queen Letizia of Spain, facing locals, of course, in Spain impacted by those devastating floods. Small boat smugglers to face fast-track justice like rioters. Migrant smugglers will be fast-tracked through the courts in the same way as summer rioters under a crackdown to curb illegal channel crossings. Newspaper, Britain's hope for Harris win, but most think Trump will be US president. Daily Express, I was wrong to say that I wouldn't put up taxes, says Rachel Reeves. Daily Star, phew, is it me or is it very warm for this time of year? Record 21 degrees centigrade weather as bonfire week heats up. Metro, Spanish royals face flood's fury, rain storm. Spain's King Felipe bore the brunt of anger as he visited a town devastated by flash floods that have killed at least 214 people, with 2,000 still missing. Well, let's get reaction to tomorrow's front pages from tonight's top pundits. I'm delighted to welcome Neil Parish, Lord Coolvere Ranger, and Susie Stride. And Susie, a bold and punchy headline in the Times newspaper, the Prime Minister, your leader, talking tough on immigration. Starmer, the world must wake up to the severity of the migration crisis. Plus, the Telegraph suggesting that small boat smugglers will face fast-track justice.
I think this is really important. I mean, look, ultimately, we know this is a key issue that people care about, and I've said it time and time again. We have to listen to people, you have to listen to the public. And I think this is good and I think this is important, but also what the Telegraph is saying, this kind of, facing fast-track justice, like the rioters, 400 investigators and border security officers armed with new counter-terror-style powers to detect, disrupt and convict gang members. I think this is important, and I know everyone keeps going, oh, stop saying smash, because when you hear something time and time again, it gets a bit boring, doesn't it? And it's like, just get on with it.
Like the black hole.
Yes. But as we know in messaging, you do have to repeat it a million times for people to get it. But I think this is good, and this makes me happy because there's two things, isn't there? There's, it is awful that people are drowning in the Channel, but also, this thing of gangs. Increased numbers and the fact that, these people are basically making money, from it. The whole thing about it is awful. I think this is positive.
I think the drones as well are a really good idea because I don't know why we haven't sort of dispatched them before, but I think it's probably...
Have you got any of those on the farm?
Yeah, very useful they are too.
Brilliant.
I know people who round up their sheep with them.
That's amazing.
But seriously, I think, the drones will help, and I think it's making sure that the French prosecute. There's got to be a deal done with the Germans over, where the boats are and being held. All of these things will help. But in the end, you've also got to have a deterrent when you get here. And I think that's the one thing that's missing in the Starmer approach. But these other approaches, I actually welcome.
Coolvere, can Sir Keir Starmer stop the boats?
Well, Yes, well, this is his smash the gangs, isn't it? Where Rishi Sunak had stopped the boats. So Keir Starmer has smashed the gang. So he's got to get a grip of this. And now that we're over the sort of, well, initial phase of the budget conversation, its focus will come back to this mission as he has. And I think, yes, look, I want to see the government succeed in this, much like every other person in this country. We don't want to see the horrible, terrible kind of tragedies that we hear about, the migrant deaths of children and girls and babies and mothers in the English Channel. This is not what any person in this country wants to see. So whatever the government can do to smash those gangs, but it will be an international effort. So it's good to read in the Times.
This is more of the same, isn't it, Colville?
Well, it is. But the government has to get on and do it. The previous government was trying to do it.
Is the absence of a deterrent a problem there?
Yes. A deterrent is something that is an essential part of the armoury, Neil, as you're saying.
Because the numbers, you see, are now higher than they were last year already. And we've got another, 2 months to go nearly.
The gangs are selling a promise of milk and honey, come to this land, everything will be fine. And you do need something else that will say, no, that's not what's going to be the reality of the situation. And it's all part of disrupting their narrative, breaking their infrastructure, breaking their operations, and stopping people buying into this false
because the gangs won't be able to sell these places on these boats if people decided it wasn't right to come.
Susie, if you transport us 4 years from now, when hopefully you'll be a Labour MP and doing a great job, no doubt, what would be an acceptable number of illegal migrant crossings annually by the end of this Parliament?
I mean, I'm going to be honest, I'm just not going to give a number, but what I am going to say is this.
10,000 a year, maybe?
What I am going to say is this, that, you know, you can't get across the Channel if you don't have one of those boats. And I just think, you know, my hope, you know, is Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer does the business on this. Because like we just said, we don't want people drowning on our shores. But also, you know, these are evil people. Let's lock them up. Let's go after them.
Well, it's three things,
They've got away with it for too long.
Yeah, it's three things. It's a humanitarian crisis, which you've all pointed out. It's an economic crisis because accommodating illegal migrants in hotels is £8 million a day and growing. £3 billion a year. And then, of course, it's a national security crisis because we don't know who all of these folk are. And I can't imagine that they're all angelic. So, you know, if you don't know, then you don't know.
Identities as well.
Right. But you're not... Go on.
Then you just... And the fact is, we do know there are genuine... Like, my mum works with refugees from Iran. You know, you've got... And one of the stories is of this woman walking around, you know, in striped pyjamas, you know, and just, you know, the fact that women can't have their hair out in Iran. And so we've got all these Iranian refugees where if they go back, they're going to be tortured, they're going to be...
Well, this is a point.
And it's the genuine one.
That's where we've got to identify
getting locked up in these hotels and whatnot. And so this is why we've got to deal with this.
Indeed. But listen, this... budget, you know, it was a long time ago. The news cycle is about 24 hours, but it's Sunday. We're still talking about it. And I wonder, Susie, if that's because it was a poor budget or ill-advised, politically naive. Papers today were saying that you know, there are various Labour backbenchers furious about this unsellable budget that they're having to get behind. And now James Dyson, one of the country's leading entrepreneurs, of course, the inventor of the Dyson vacuum cleaner, says that Rachel Reeves's budget sucks.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're going to have those people, and that's fine, and Mr Dyson can say that.
He's important, isn't he?
And look, and you're right. Look, businesses are important. We were just talking about...
James Dyson isn't those people.
You know, and it is important, but this is what I'm going to say. Let's watch this space. It's been 4 days, but I do think... I mean, you've already said it. You know, the British public, actually, they're polling that they're not against this budget. I tell you why. National minimum wage, because they want their GP appointments.
But
they want their family members to get
OBR don't like it.
You see, one thing this budget's not going to provide is any form of growth, because what it's doing is it's stifling private business and it will stop employment if you're not careful, and therefore there won't be growth. And all this borrowing that we're going to have, and some of this spending in the future may be very laudable, but it's not going to create growth quickly. I can remember getting the 303 through in 2014, and that road has just been built in 2024, right? So that's the time it takes. And Labour will say they'll speed everything up, but I assure you, I know what government's like of all persuasions, and so it won't work.
You're right, Neil, and the one point I'd say to Susie is that If you want to improve public services, you have to reform them. And what this budget hasn't said is that it will spend more money on the NHS without any reform whatsoever.
Do you want to join Kemi's army?
No, I don't want to join Kemi's.
To the Conservatives.
No, I don't want to join
You're wearing royal blue tonight.
I am wearing royal blue. It's just
is
a
that
good
a little
colour.
advert?
It's a good colour. It's a good colour. But what I would say is this. Look, Wes Streeting, listen to me, he is a formidable person, formidable leader, and I'm telling you now, he is not just going to throw money at the NHS. He is going to...
But there is no sign of reform.
It needs
money is being paid.
All right, no
about
digitalisation.
What we're going to do, hold fire. Are Labour, are they wasting your money? Is Rachel Reeves a liar? Do you feel cheated by this Labour government? Plus more front pages. See you in 2.
Court cases.
A presidential dropout.
Assassination attempts.
This has been a US election like no other.
And if the polls are correct, it's on a knife edge.
On Tuesday night, stay up with us as the drama unfolds and America decides their next president.
We'll discuss what it means for them, for the world, and for our special relationship. America Decides, Tuesday night from 11.
Only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Millions are struggling to stay warm with the wet weather, the cost of living and, of course, cuts to fuel payments.
Yes, winter is fast approaching, so it's crucial to find cost-effective ways to save on your energy expenses whilst staying reasonably warm.
So joining us to provide advice on heating your home, or at least staying warm somehow, is one of the leading voices on lowering energy bills, Nick Miles. And you are very welcome in here this morning. I mean, a lot of people would say, well, in the olden days, you just used to put on an extra jumper. But actually, it's more serious than that, isn't it? What is the best way, the most cost-effective way, to keep your home warm?
Some of the bigger things is we need to do more things on insulating our properties, but actually sometimes, it can be simple things like turning down a thermostat. Those that have got the luxury of being able to afford energy bills and keep their homes on the thermostat a bit too high. If you just turn it down by one simple degree, as long as you keep it between 18 and 22 degrees, can save up to 5 to 10% of your energy bill. So that's a kind of a very simple way of doing things. But, it can be other little tips and tricks you can do as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I always get it when people say about this, but like 18 degrees is not warm for a house.
No, and it's twofold actually. It's that kind of relative temperature, but also it's the kind of drafts and things you have in your house. So it's the comfort factor. So what we have a lot of old properties in our country. You've got some 8 million hard-to-treat properties built before World War II that have got poor insulation, but also very, very drafty. So it's the temperature and it's the kind of the draftiness of them that kind of keeps us uncomfortable.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
OK, more reaction to tomorrow's front pages with Neil Parish, Coolvere Ranger, Lord Ranger, I should say, and Susie Stride. And what about this one? King Charles and Prince William's private estates are reportedly taking millions of pounds from public bodies, including the NHS State schools and the military. Is it justified? Susie Stride.
I mean, I'm not like a big royal fan, but, you know, I'm OK with them being there while they're there. But this is going to upset a lot of people. And I was reading this last night and it just made me so angry. And I know you pointed out, you know, maybe there's an agenda behind it or whatnot, but ultimately this is wrong, it's unjust, and I hope there is a way of dealing with this, you know, because ultimately, and other people may not like me saying this, but they didn't earn that land, they didn't work for that land. You know, you're just talking about Dyson. I respect someone like him because he's worked hard. Or even people, their parents have worked hard, they passed it on. But here I'm just like, they've got this land from 200 years ago when there was some sort of system where if you were a certain class, you got the land. Not OK with that. But the point is the fact that, like, the NHS and charities, and, like, that's not OK, having to pay money
but Coolville, the King Charles doesn't go and buy Ferraris and Lamborghinis, does he?
No, he doesn't. And I think also they are now operating in a commercial environment. They do commercial activities. They do fund a lot of their own activities, but they also do the amount of work the royal family does for charity and everything else, the patronage of so many different things. And the value that they do bring. This number of times a business case, if we want to go to that horrible phraseology of what the royal family's business case to UK PLC is, they are very much bringing money into the country. Now, this is a commercial part of their business. That's what's helping them run part of the royal family, maintain some of the buildings that they have, the cost of refurbing properties. We can see, you know, Andrew's racking up some costs, which he can't find the commercial money quite right now to pay for.
Prince Andrew, yeah.
But these kinds of headlines will not be good. Because obviously the public, as Susie says, will be sceptical about what's going on here. But it does need to be unpicked a little and explained further.
I think the King does a lot of, you know, and the royal family do a lot of charitable works as well. But I think, one of the things that I will say to you is that when they run the, you know, I know a lot about the Duchy of Cornwall and the farms they run. It's very...
Well, you own nearly as much land as the King, don't you?
No, quite. And the rents are very commercial and quite high.
Really?
And so therefore, I think, you know, and a great monarchist I think as time goes on, it will have to be reviewed because they can't, on the one hand, charge very commercial rates and then pay no tax on it.
Exactly.
Let me give you one example. You're right about this, Neil. Let me give you an example. According to the Sunday Times and Channel 4, they've done a deal with the NHS to store a fleet of electric ambulances which will pocket the King £11.4 million over 5 years. This is money from the NHS.
Yeah, and it's a commercial deal. And in a way, he can do that commercial deal, but then, likewise, he has to pay tax on it if he does it. And so I think where we've actually got to look at this all now is, do we actually leave it as it is? I think it's right that the royal family have these lands and are able to manage them, but I do actually think they need to look at...
Doesn't it mean that the royal family are independent? In a sense, they're almost self-funding. Because they've got these profitable enterprises, they don't need so much money from us.
Well, look, this is what I would say. Give them a little bit of money to live on, OK? And give them the security, because I think it's important they have security. And the rest of that land, why should they have that land? Just genuinely, why should they have that land and not a family that lives in Poplar or in Newcastle? Seriously, I'm sorry, you've got to ask the question.
Does it not sustain the costs of running the royal households and the maintenance of these wonderful buildings and also the charitable causes, as Coolville mentioned?
Well, no, look, it's great that they do their things that they do for charity. That's absolutely fine. But what I'm saying to you is, put all of that money into one little pot, give them the money for them to live on, and their money's going, and the rest of it they should have. I'm sorry,
the other side
there's no way of arguing this.
But the other side we've forgotten about is that
in the future people are going to look back and say, how did we allow this?
If we elect a president and ran a presidential office and all of that, it would absolutely cost a fortune.
Yeah, but the president's running a country.
So therefore, we actually, a constitutional monarchy is the best solution in the end.
Coolville, briefly, is this a political headache for King Charles?
Not at the moment, but it could become one. And I think, especially, obviously, under a Labour government, with the kind of voices, Susie, quite right to have a say on this, free speech and everything, and have a view. But I think it could become one. I think the royal family have to be careful about how this goes on in this conversation.
And I return to the fact, if it's commercial, then they must pay commercial rates.
There you go. Well, listen, I tell you, we're paying commercial rates for Josh Howie this evening. That's right. And let me tell you, worth every penny. Josh, headliners is next. What have you got for us?
We have so much stuff coming up. First of all, I'm at the desk that you use. I just want to say, Mark, you've left this in a terrible state.
It's a mess.
This is ridiculous.
Why is there loo roll there?
Clean up. You tell me. Anyway, yes, tonight we have Beauty and the Beast, the panellists. We have favourites of headliners. We have Cresta Wetton. We have Lewis Schaefer. We have who's going to be fighting against Khan in the next election. And we have Labour MPs being racist against the new Conservative leader. Tune in.
Excellent. And Josh, don't try any of my ointments or powders. OK, back to me. Where's the camera? There you go. We got there in the end. Listen, folks, thank you so much. Well done to Jack and Mel and Jane and Connor and the whole team for working so hard today, and Mariana and Mel yesterday as well. It's been such a great weekend. I am back on Friday at 8 o'clock. Thank you for your company on the radio, on telly. I love doing this show for you. Thank you to Neil, Kulveer, Susie. Headliners is next. See you Friday.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. This is your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. We've been searching for the colour amongst the grey clouds this weekend, and that is continuing right until the very last hours of the day. Still a lot of grey skies for much of England, Wales and Northern Ireland throughout this evening and overnight. The odd spot of drizzle will be out there. The clearest skies will be reserved for the far north of Scotland. Here, temperatures will drop off a little bit more. Patchy frost is possible overnight. Elsewhere, though, that blanket of cloud will hold temperatures up on the positive side of things. With high pressure in charge, it does mean we have relatively light winds across the board tomorrow, but we are still plagued by all of this cloud. So the skies are going to be pretty grey and drab for many of us. Mostly dry, but I certainly can't rule out the odd spot of drizzle around in places, particularly around coast and over the hills where it could be quite murky at times. The best of the sunshine first thing will be likely again for the northern areas of Scotland. But once we get into the afternoon, hopefully we should start to see the cloud breaking up a bit more, particularly for the likes of Western Northern Ireland, parts of Western Wales, some potentially Cornwall as well. Also the far south-east of England, tapping into some of this clearing sky across France as well, allowing that sunshine to poke through later on as well. Temperatures will be roughly where we'd expect them to be for the time of year, topping up around 11 to 13 degrees Celsius, but certainly those that hold on to the cloud throughout the day will be feeling quite cool. As we head throughout the week, high pressure is still in charge. It's going to keep these weather fronts at bay out in the Atlantic, so it is again going to be mostly dry away from those outbreaks of drizzle that the cloud could be thick enough to produce in time. Tuesday morning could be quite foggy in places. Do watch out for potential a little bit of disruption around at times, but again, widespread grey skies for a lot of us, just hoping for those locations to potentially see a few brighter breaks in there at times. But really, the outlook throughout much of the week is for the cloud to remain, though temperatures may be coming up a little bit later on. Enjoy the evening. Bye-bye.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're giving you the chance to win everything you need to celebrate the festivities. There's £20,000 and £25 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. We'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This week is Chocolate Week, the ultimate celebration of everything rich, sweet and indulgent.
Yes, and we now have the best person in the studio with us to satisfy all of your chocolate cravings. We're joined now by master chocolatier Ollie the Choc. Ollie,
hello.
really
Hey,
good to see you this
Thank
morning.
you for having me.
And you brought some of your chocolate in with you.
I did. I brought some tasting samples. You're very welcome to help yourself.
So what have you got here? Tell us.
So this is my signature chocolate. I call it the Holy Grail. It's got sea salt flakes, crushed Oreo, caramel fudge pieces, very Moorish.
I love a caramel and salt combo, just, you know. I feel like you see it everywhere now. Look,
You won't be disappointed.
Look, I want everyone to see a close-up of this one. Can we get a shot on this one? So this is Oreo, there we are, caramel and salt. Do you want to try some?
You go first.
Help yourselves. And then this bar of chocolate is a little bit of a wild card. That's a mystery flavour, so...
OK, I love a mystery.
I'm not going to tell you what that is.
Hold on this one. This one's amazing.
Are you?
Oreo, caramel.
That's my biggest seller.
I'll keep my palate clean for this. So this is a mystery flavour.
You've got to guess what that is.
Is that a nut in there, I see? Right, here we go. Ready?
I'm not saying anything.
Talk us through.
Very crunchy.
For me, I'm all about textures in chocolate.
Me too.
It has got a good crunch to it, hasn't it? It's not the kind of flavour that you would expect.
Oh, I can't get it.
Is it sweet? Is it salty?
No, it's salty, yeah.
It's
OK,
salty.
hang on, bit more.
OK.
Bit more.
I mean, just keep going.
Crisps? Wait,
It is crispy, it's crunchy. Could it be crisps?
I think it could be crisps. Yeah, it's crisps.
So what flavour?
Salt and vinegar. Cheese and onion.
Yes,
Salt
nailed
and
it. You know.
Oh, you're much better than me.
Love that.
Do you know what? I think I've got a bit of a cold, so my taste buds are
Oh,
off.
you're going to blame that, are you?
That's my excuse. That's delicious.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's 11 o'clock, which can only mean it's time for headliners. We've got newspapers, comedians, opinions and jokes. So join us over the next hour to find out what is offensive about this ad, why Americans better start brushing their teeth, and where can't you use one of these. I'm Josh Howie, and the other options is Shag, Marry, Kill. We have Cresta Wetton and Lewis Schaefer. But before tomorrow's news, let's go to tonight's headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Josh, thank you. The top stories. Kemi Badenoch has made her first senior appointment as the new Conservative Party leader. It's understood that Dame Rebecca Harris will be the party's chief whip, replacing Stuart Andrew. The job of chief whip is to maintain party discipline and try to ensure MPs vote as the leadership would like them to. Meanwhile, Kemi Badenoch says she'll tell hard truths